When do you want to do yours?
Tomorrow or today, I don't care.
Okay. Let's do it tomorrow. Darren, can we get a date when we get an opportunity?
Tomorrow, but what's your plan?
Where?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
All right, Darren, good appearances for the record.
Good morning, Your Honor. John Voitel for the people. Ronald Ambrose, Pier 9.
Wait a minute, there's some more people on the prosecution
sorry.
side.
Good morning.
They know how good a lawyer you are, so they had to get triple team you today. You ready, Mr. Ambrose?
I am, Your Honor.
All right.
Good morning, Your Honor. Lisa Lindsay on behalf of the Fourth State of Michigan.
Mark Kindling on behalf of the people.
Ronald Ambrose, Pier 9 on behalf of Mr. Bashara.
All right. You may be seated. Now, it's come to my attention that there were some filings of some affidavits late yesterday. I haven't received them.
Okay. I have another copy of it.
Can I see them?
Yes.
Okay, are we ready to go forward with anything else?
Yes, Your Honor.
What?
I have Chief Hill that I'd like to call as a witness.
Okay, where's the chief?
Also, Your Honor, just the motion for sequestration is continuing, correct?
Very good. Raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear a firm testimony about to give in this man is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated and state your name for the record.
David Hillard.
Okay, pull the microphone closer to your mouth. You may proceed.
Chief Hillard, what is your current occupation?
I'm the Chief of Police in the City of Grosse Pointe Park and Director of Public Safety.
And how long have you been Chief of Police of Grosse Pointe Park?
Since 2001.
Okay. Prior to that, what was your experience?
I've been with the department 44 years. I've worked my way up through the ranks from street patrol all the way up to the chief's position.
And that's been all through Grosse Pointe Park Police Department?
Prior to working in Grosse Pointe Park, I worked for the city of Detroit for 3.5, but my experience in 44 has been with Grosse Pointe Park.
Okay. And in that experience with Grosse Pointe Park, had you had occasion to know of the defendant, in this case, Robert Bashara?
Yes.
And how long have you known of him, or how long have you known of him?
I couldn't tell you the exact thing. Quite a while.
Would you say more than 20 years?
Okay, can we fast forward up to the last couple years?
Okay. Has, to your knowledge, Mr. Bashara been active in the community?
Yes.
Okay. And as Chief of Police, had you been involved with any of his, you know he has a number of buildings in Grosse Pointe Park?
Yes.
Were there any violations?
Counsel, what's they got to do with a new trial? No, we're not going to have another trial. We're just a motion for a new trial, okay?
Fair enough.
So let's speed up.
All right. You had interviewed Mr. Bashara sometime after the murder of Jane Bashara, is that correct?
I did not interview him myself, no.
Were you privy to the interview?
Yes.
And how so?
Transcripts and audio.
Okay. And there was never an admission by Mr. Bashara of his involvement in this murder.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. At some point, Mr. Bashara names Joseph Gens as a potential suspect.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Was it your department that had named Mr. Bashara as a suspect or a person of interest?
As a person of interest,
And when was that made?
late Friday evening, after the incident occurred.
Okay, so that would have been on the Friday of January 27th or 8th?
Okay,
Okay.
whatever the
Actually-
Friday was, yes.
January 27th. So
Okay.
what evidence did you have to name Mr. Bashara as a witness? Or as a suspect or a person of interest?
I didn't name him as a suspect, I named him as a person of interest.
Okay, as a person of interest, what evidence did you have?
It's not evidence, it's facts of the investigation to that point in time.
Now, one of your officers had stated in testimony that a person of interest and a suspect is the same. I'm assuming you're disagreeing with that?
It can be.
Okay. Were you involved in the interrogation or the interview with Joseph Gens?
One
And,
interview, yes.
and he was involved in 2 interviews, is that correct?
I believe so.
At least 2.
I believe so.
Do you recall the date that you were involved?
I believe it was February 1.
Okay, and so that was the second interview with Mr. Gens?
Yes,
Mr. Gens admitted to the murder, correct?
yes,
And he alleges that Bob Bashara is the one that more or less ordered him to do this?
Counsel, where are we going with this? This is a motion for a new trial, okay? Where are we going with this line of interrogation?
Because Detective Hiller, I'm sorry,
Detective.
Chief Hiller was never called as a witness in the case, and that's one of the things that Mr. Bashara wanted, who he wanted as a witness in the case.
Well, what would he add as a witness?
He would add that there was no evidence of Bob Bashara being involved in the murder except for Joseph Gens' statement.
And is that what you surmise or Mr. Bashara is surmising?
Well, there.
Oh, okay, let's get to I'm not going to litigate this trial all over again, okay? So let's go straight to what you believe was missing in this trial to grant you a new trial, okay? But we're not relitigating this case. So let's catch up.
Besides Joseph Gens' statement, was there any direct evidence that Bob Bashara was involved in the murder?
You say evidence, there was facts that I had observed and I monitored over a period of a couple of days that I used when I made that statement.
And what types of facts are those?
It has to do with the scene of the finding of the deceased, his phone calls to the department, interviews that he did as a total of a number of factors.
Joseph Gens states, you correct me if I'm wrong, but he states he arrived at the residence. Do you know what time he states that?
I don't.
Do you recall any of his interview testimony?
I don't recall directly, no.
If he says 7 o'clock that he arrives at the residence, would that?
I don't recall the times given.
Okay. In the interview with Joseph Gens, do you recall a statement being made that Bob Bashara was the person that they were really interested in?
I don't recall that exact conversation or I'm sorry, statement.
But
He implied that Mr. Bashara was involved in the incident, in the crime, correct?
Okay. And after these two interviews with Joseph Gens, he's eventually released. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Why was he released?
Prior to sending a warrant request to the prosecutor's office, it was our best thoughts that we should release him at the time to conduct further investigation, to see if we could obtain some DNA samples and some evaluation for that. So it was more of an ongoing investigation release.
But now, let me understand, at that time, had Mr. Gens admitted that he killed James Bashara?
He admitted that he had been involved in the incident, yes, correct.
Involved like how?
At the direction of Mr. Bashara, he was the one that killed James Bashara.
And you released him?
That's correct, ma'am.
Why?
It was, having discussed this with the City of Detroit homicide team who was with us on this investigation, we felt that we should release for further investigation DNA. We had obtained some samples.
Okay, but the man just admitted that he was involved in a murder, and you released him so you can get DNA samples, and he could possibly flee the jurisdiction?
That was a major discussion that we had, but it was the best advice of the homicide investigators, who I value their knowledge, and thought that that was the best process at the time to do it, best procedure.
Go ahead.
Was this the first homicide that you've been involved with?
No.
All right. How many prior homicides had you been involved with?
Luckily not a lot, maybe 4 or 5 or 6.
And that's over a...
Long period of time.
Okay. More than 30 years?
I've been there 44, yes.
Okay. So 44 years, a handful of homicides.
Correct.
All right.
Were there any confessions?
You tested my memory on all of them. Not that I recall off the top of my head, I have to think back.
Was it your decision to release Joseph Gens, or was it Detroit homicide?
It was a joint
Okay.
decision.
But it was your ultimate decision. You didn't have to listen to Detroit, did you?
Didn't have to, no ma'am.
Okay. But why did you choose to listen to them?
I valued their judgment.
Okay, to release someone that just admitted that they killed one of your residents, and you thought it was in the best interest to let them go, so you get DNA later.
We had obtained the DNA samples, we needed to get the results.
And you couldn't detain them, ask for a warrant at that time from the prosecutor? Well, let me ask this. Was Miss Lindsay on the case at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, did you call Miss Lindsay and say, listen, this guy just confessed to helping Bob Bashara, what should we do?
I don't recall a direct conversation with Miss Lindsay, but I'm sure that they were consulted. I don't remember who did who made the consultation.
But you didn't?
I don't recall doing it, no ma'am.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Is it your understanding that Miss Lindsay was aware that Joseph Gens would be released?
The prosecutor's office was made aware of it. I don't recall if it was Miss Lindsay or if it was somebody else at the time from the unit.
After he was released?
No, ma'am.
Before he was released?
Yes.
Okay.
What, from the...
Well, I'm just curious. Was there anything that you had on him to monitor his whereabouts, Mr. Gens, in the event that he could have fled, like a tether, like somebody following him or something? Or did you just say, see you later?
No, he didn't. It wasn't just you. He had voluntarily came in.
So you just voluntarily let him go?
He had support that came in with him from the religious community, and that was all played into our decision.
So because a minister came with him, you thought that that was credible after he admitted that he killed somebody to let him go back home with the minister?
It was more of the totality of the circumstances and the evidence that we had at the time.
And what was the totality of the circumstances you relied upon?
That it was our best thought and the homicide unit to wait until we were able to do further investigation as well as that, since we had just obtained DNA, to do a DNA test if that was possible also.
I'm curious, you said that you talked to homicide. Who told you in homicide, Detroit homicide, to let him go?
I don't recall who, and there was a number of officers there at the
Well,
time.
okay, well, who were the ones that you consulted?
I remember there was a lieutenant from Detroit homicide that was there. And
Last name?
I don't recall the last name. It's been quite some time, but he and I both discussed it, I know that. Don Olson was there from homicide. Jimenez was there from homicide. I mean, there was a number of officers there.
Okay. You may proceed.
What happens with Jane Bashara's, were you at the scene of the finding of the body?
Yes.
Okay. What happens to Jane Bashara from that point?
Detroit homicide ordered the vehicle and the deceased towed to a location for forensic examination.
And did you go, were you part of that?
Going with the vehicle?
Yes.
No.
Do you know what happened with Jane Bashara's clothing?
You'd have to talk to investigator Olson. It was his case at that time.
And
Now, wait a minute, let's talk a little bit about this. You declared him a person of interest in Grosse Pointe, but yet it was Detective Olson's case at that point?
Oh, when we found the car, that was Wednesday. I didn't say anything until Friday night.
Okay, so this was still a Detroit case?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
so, correct me if I'm wrong,
So when did the body go to the morgue?
That Wednesday morning when she was discovered in Detroit, Don Olson or Jimenez ordered the vehicle towed to Detroit with the body still in the car.
Okay, but my question was, when did her body out of the vehicle get to the morgue? What day?
I can't be sure, but I believe
Well, let's
Wednesday.
take a break and find out. We need to get some more dates. I'm going to take a 15-minute recess. We need to get dates, we need to get names, we need to get a little bit more. Let's take a recess. Mr. Ambrose, is this the only affidavit?
There's two of them.
Okay, let me- Did you give one to my secretary?
She just went, she didn't go get a few just, I just.